In a savage world of werewolf courts and deadly power games, a broken girl sells her soul to a demon for one chance at revenge. She wants to murder the woman who stole everything from her. But when she crashes the prince's hunt wearing stolen beauty and borrowed power, she catches the eye of the kingdom's most dangerous predator. He's no hero. He's a ruthless alpha who sees the killer hiding behind her mask. And he doesn't want to save her. He wants to own her. The glass slipper she leaves behind? It's not lost. It's a trap. Now she's bound to serve him as his assassin and his plaything, while the demon's deadline ticks closer. But the prince has been playing a darker game all along, one that will cost her more than just her soul. Will she become the weapon he's crafted, or the monster who destroys them both? The autumn wind whipped through Ella's thin servant's dress as she crept through the manor's gardens after midnight. The sounds of drunken laughter and music from the engagement celebration still echoed from inside, but out here, darkness reigned. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small cloth bundle containing the ritual items she'd secretly gathered over months of planning: black candles, salt, and her most precious possession, the silver pendant that had belonged to her father. 3 years, she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. 3 years of scrubbing floors and enduring their mockery, but no more. The path to the crossroads was etched in her memory from childhood warnings. Her father had made her promise never to venture there, especially on a new moon night like tonight. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, breaking her last promise to him in order to avenge his murder. Ella's feet carried her through the sleeping town of Ashbourne, past shuttered shops and silent homes. Her wolf-quick hearing caught the occasional rustle of night creatures, making her heart ache with remembered loss. 3 years without her wolf felt like missing a limb, a constant phantom pain that never eased. The crossroads lay at the edge of pack territory, where 4 dirt roads met beneath ancient oaks. As Ella approached, the air grew thick and heavy, pressing against her skin like a physical weight. Even without her wolf, she could sense the wrongness of this place, the way shadows moved against the wind, how sounds seemed to die before reaching her ears. Her hands shook as she laid out the ritual circle just as she'd read in the forbidden texts she'd stolen glimpses of in Marguerite's private library. Black candles at 4 points, salt line connecting them, her father's pendant in the center. Blood would complete it, her blood, freely given. "I know you're here," Ella spoke into the darkness, proud that her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. "I've come to make a deal." Nothing happened. The night remained still, mocking her desperation. Ella's fingers curled into fists. "Show yourself," she demanded, letting years of rage crack through her careful mask of submission. "I offer my blood, my soul, whatever price you name. Just give me the power to destroy those who murdered my father and stole everything from me." The air shifted. Shadows pooled and twisted, taking shape before her eyes. Ella forced herself not to step back as a figure emerged. Tall, male, darkness given form. Eyes like burning coals regarded her with ancient amusement. "Little wolf," the demon's voice was smoke and velvet. "How delicious to find you here. The once mighty Alpha's daughter, reduced to summoning creatures your kind usually hunts. Tell me, what would dear Edmund think?" Ella lifted her chin, refusing to show fear. "My father is dead, murdered by the woman who now celebrates her engagement upstairs. She used dark magic to break me, to cut me off from my wolf. I want justice." "Justice?" The demon circled her, his movement liquid shadow. "Or vengeance. They're not the same thing, precious girl." "I don't care what you call it," Ella snapped. "I want Marguerite to suffer as I have suffered. I want my wolf back. I want my pack lands returned to their rightful heir. Name your price." The demon stopped before her, head tilted in consideration. His form seemed to shift between human and something else, something with horns and wings made of night itself. "Such pretty demands," But are you certain? The price for such power is steep, and there are no refunds in deals like these. Ella met those burning eyes without flinching. 3 years of helpless rage had burned away her fear, leaving only steel determination. I've already lost everything that matters. My soul is a small price to pay for the chance to make things right. Oh, sweet girl. The demon's smile was razor sharp. Who said anything about your soul? I have so many of those already. No, what I want is far more interesting. The demon's smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp to be human. What I want, little wolf, is to watch, to witness your triumph or failure, to taste your hope and despair as you play this dangerous game. Grant me that, and I'll give you exactly what you need: 7 days of power, beauty, and the return of your wolf. Ella's breath caught. It seemed too simple, too easy. Just watching. At midnight on the 7th day, when your time runs out, I collect not your soul, but the memory of everything you felt during your quest, every moment of victory, every stab of pain, every rush of power. Malakar's burning eyes fixed on hers. Your experiences will be mine to savor for eternity. That's all? Ella's voice was barely a whisper. Well, that and... The demon gestured lazily. If you fail to achieve your revenge within the 7 days, I keep your wolf permanently. No more second chances, no more deals. You'll remain broken forever. The stakes made Ella's heart pound, but she didn't hesitate. 7 days was enough. It had to be. I accept. Then let's make this official. Malakar extended one shadowy hand. Do you, Ella Ashbourne, agree to grant me ownership of your 7 days of experiences and emotions, from this moment until midnight on the 7th day? Understanding that failure to achieve your revenge means permanent separation from your wolf? I do. Ella reached for his hand. Speak it properly, precious. Deals like this require precise wording. Ella drew a deep breath. I, Ella Ashbourne, agree to your terms. My experiences and emotions for 7 days of power, and my wolf forever if I fail. Their hands clasped. Malakar's touch was like ice and fire combined, sending shocks through her entire body. Then we have a deal. The demon's magic hit her like lightning, dropping her to her knees in the dirt. It poured through her veins like liquid fire, burning away 3 years of weakness and submission. Ella screamed as her bones cracked and reformed, as her muscles tore and rebuilt themselves stronger. Her plain brown hair lengthened and darkened to midnight black, her skin smoothed to porcelain perfection, her body reshaping itself into a weapon of seduction and power. But the real agony came when her wolf stirred. 3 years of emptiness erupted into fierce, wild joy as her wolf clawed its way back to consciousness. Ella felt her animal half howl in triumph, felt razor-sharp fangs lengthen in her human mouth, felt golden alpha power flood her eyes. The connection she'd mourned for so long snapped back into place, stronger than ever, and tears streamed down her face at the completion she'd almost forgotten. When the transformation finished, Ella rose on steady legs, power humming through every fiber of her being. She felt beautiful, deadly, and more alive than she had in years. Her wolf prowled just beneath her skin, eager to hunt, to run, to kill. Malakar circled her appreciatively. My finest work, I must say. You'll turn every head at the royal hunt, especially since no one will recognize the broken little Omega in this magnificent creature. He paused, eyes glinting. 7 days, precious. Make them count. I will. Ella's voice was different too, lower, richer, with the natural authority of an alpha. Marguerite won't know what hit her. Oh, I'm counting on that. The demon's form began to fade into shadow. I'll be watching, little wolf. Don't disappoint me. As Malakar vanished, Ella stood alone at the crossroads, her enhanced senses drinking in the night. She could smell every flower, hear every rustling leaf, feel the power thrumming through the earth itself. Her wolf was restless, demanding they run, demanding they hunt. Soon, she promised her other half. First, we need to prepare. The royal hunt began tomorrow, and she had to be ready. Marguerite would be there with her new fiancé, playing the gracious noble, never suspecting that the stepdaughter she'd broken would return as her doom. Ella turned back toward town, her steps silent and predatory. 7 days to infiltrate the hunt, get close to Marguerite, and exact her revenge. 7 days to make her stepmother suffer before killing her. Her wolf growled in anticipation. They would not fail. They couldn't afford to. The price was steep, but Ella knew it would be worth it. Let Malachar have her memories. By the time this was over, they would be memories of victory, of justice finally served, of a broken wolf rising to reclaim everything that was stolen from her. And if she had to become a monster to destroy one, so be it. The forest estate of Prince Valerius Blackthorn loomed before Ella, a sprawling fortress of dark stone and ancient timber that dominated the mountainside. Massive iron gates groaned open at her approach, her borrowed carriage joining the steady stream of noble arrivals for the royal hunt. Her enhanced senses caught every detail, the mingled scents of dozens of werewolf packs, the sound of raucous laughter and music spilling from the great hall, the metallic taste of power in the air. Her wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin, adjusting to their newfound strength. "Your invitation, my lady?" A uniformed beta guard approached as her carriage halted. Ella withdrew the forged documents Malachar's magic had created. "Lady Seraphina, of the Northern Territories." Her new voice carried the perfect blend of authority and cultured refinement. The guard's eyes widened slightly as he caught her scent, pure alpha power, exotic and compelling. He bowed deeply. "Welcome to the royal hunt, my lady. Allow me to escort you." Ella descended from the carriage with fluid grace, her midnight blue gown whispering against marble steps. She felt the weight of countless stairs as she entered the great hall. Her transformation was flawless, tall and lithe, with night-dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders, porcelain skin that seemed to glow in the torchlight, and eyes like liquid gold. No trace remained of the broken Omega who had scrubbed these very floors. The great hall was a riot of sensory input. Hundreds of werewolves from noble bloodlines packed the vast space, their competing alpha auras creating an electric tension in the air. Servants wove through the crowd with platters of rich food and flowing wine. Music from a string quartet battled with the din of conversation, laughter, and the occasional growl of dominance displays. Ella accepted a glass of wine, using it as cover to scan the crowd. Her enhanced vision cut through the press of bodies, searching for her target. The week-long hunt was as much about politics and pleasure as actual hunting, nobles strutting and scheming, forming alliances, and indulging in barely concealed debauchery, the perfect environment for revenge, if she played it carefully. A burst of familiar laughter cut through the noise like a blade to her heart. There, holding court near one of the massive fireplaces, stood Lady Marguerite. Her stepmother was draped in emeralds and silk, her beautiful face animated as she charmed a circle of admirers. Lord Aldrich Greymore hovered possessively at her side, his hand resting on her lower back. Ella's fingers tightened on her wineglass until she heard the crystal crack. Her wolf surged forward, howling for blood, for justice. The urge to leap across the room and tear out Marguerite's throat was nearly overwhelming. 3 years of helpless rage boiled up, threatening to shatter her carefully constructed mask. Only iron control kept her features smooth, kept her from shifting right there in the middle of the hall. She forced herself to breathe, to remember the plan. Quick violence would accomplish nothing. She needed to be patient, to get close enough to make Marguerite suffer properly before the end. That's when she felt it, a heavy, predatory gaze that seemed to pin her in place. The hair on the back of her neck rose, her wolf instantly alert to the presence of an apex predator. Power rolled across the room like a physical wave, far beyond anything she'd sensed from the other nobles. Ella turned slowly, following that magnetic pull until her eyes met his across the crowded hall. Prince Valerius Blackthorn lounged on his raised throne, one leg thrown carelessly over the arm of the massive chair. He was devastating, tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp aristocratic features and silver-streaked black hair that fell past his shoulders. But it was his eyes that held her frozen, pale silver, ancient and cold as the moon itself, filled with the kind of power that came from centuries of absolute rule. Those eyes studied her now with predatory intensity, like a wolf sizing up particularly interesting prey. His lips curved in a smile that contained neither warmth nor mercy. For a moment, Ella forgot how to breathe. Everything she'd heard about the vampire prince of the werewolves, the immortal ruler who'd held the throne for 3 centuries through cunning and brutality, hadn't prepared her for the reality of his presence. This was power incarnate, beautiful and lethal as an unsheathed blade. The prince's silver gaze held hers, a clear challenge in the way he refused to look away first. No one else in the hall seemed to exist. It was a battle of wills now. Look away and show submission, or hold his stare and risk drawing too much attention. Ella held the prince's gaze, her heart thundering, but her face carefully composed. Around them, the great hall had begun to empty as nobles made their way to the courtyard for the evening hunt. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold through the towering windows. "The hunt begins in 10 minutes, a herald's voice rang out. "All participants gather in the southern courtyard." Ella finally broke eye contact with Valerius, turning gracefully toward the exit. She felt his stare following her every movement as she joined the crowd filing out into the cool evening air. The courtyard was chaos, servants rushing about with equipment, nobles forming small hunting parties, horses stamping nervously as they caught the excited energy of so many predators in one place. She deliberately positioned herself near a group of younger nobles, planning to blend in with their hunting party. But before she could join them, a commanding voice cut through the noise. "Lady Seraphina!" Prince Valerius materialized beside her, moving with impossible silence for someone his size. Up close, his presence was overwhelming. Pure alpha power rolled off him in waves that made her wolf want to bare its throat despite Malakar's enchantments. "You'll hunt with me tonight." It wasn't a request. Around them, other nobles quickly backed away, creating a bubble of space. Some shot her pitying glances, others looked envious. Ella forced herself to dip into a perfect curtsy. "The honor is mine, Your Highness." His silver eyes glittered with predatory amusement. Without another word, he led her to where 2 magnificent black horses waited. They mounted and set off into the darkening forest, quickly leaving the main hunting party behind. Ella's enhanced senses tracked their path through the ancient trees, noting how Valerius deliberately steered them further from the others until the sounds of the hunt faded entirely. In a moonlit clearing, he finally reined his horse to a stop. Ella's mount followed suit, though she hadn't pulled the reins. Of course, the prince's alpha command extended even to the animals. "Now then," Valerius drawled, dismounting with fluid grace, "let's discuss your rather fascinating scent, shall we?" Ella stayed mounted, buying seconds to think. "I'm afraid I don't understand, Your Highness." He laughed, a rich, dark sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Oh, you play the game well, little wolf. The perfect courtly manners, the exotic northern accent, the alpha power that makes lesser wolves tremble." He began circling her horse, each movement purposeful and predatory. "But underneath all that lovely demon magic, I can smell what you really are. Desperation, rage. And when you look at dear Lady Marguerite," he inhaled deeply, savoring the air, "pure murder." Ice flooded Ella's veins. She'd been so careful, had practiced for hours controlling her reactions around her stepmother. But she'd never accounted for someone with senses as sharp as Valerius's. I could expose you, of course. He continued his slow circle, silver eyes never leaving her face. Strip away that enchantment and show everyone the little Omega playing dress-up. I wonder what punishment the pack laws demand for such deception. Ella's fingers tightened on the reins. If he revealed her, everything was lost. Marguerite would escape justice again. She'd die without her revenge, her soul forfeit for nothing. But then Valerius did something unexpected. He threw back his head and laughed, the sound echoing through the trees. It wasn't mocking or cruel, but genuinely delighted. By the moon, I haven't been this entertained in decades. He stopped in front of her horse, grinning up at her with too many teeth. Do you know how mind-numbingly boring these hunts usually are? The same tedious politics, the same transparent schemes, but you... He gestured at her with obvious appreciation. You've made a deal with a crossroads demon and infiltrated my court to murder your stepmother. It's deliciously ambitious. She stared down at him, wrong-footed by his reaction. What do you want? To play a game, of course. His smile turned wicked. I won't expose your little masquerade. In fact, I'll watch you work, see if you can actually pull off your revenge without getting caught. If you succeed in killing Marguerite before your time runs out, I'll let you leave my lands with my full blessing. No one will ever know what really happened. And if I fail? Then I suppose the demon gets your soul, and I get the satisfaction of watching the drama unfold. He shrugged elegantly. Either way, you've already given me the most entertainment I've had in years. So what do you say, little assassin? Shall we play? The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of calculated moves. Ella, still masquerading as Lady Seraphina, wove herself expertly into Marguerite's circle. Her stepmother, ever hungry for more status, practically preened under the attention of such an apparently powerful foreign alpha. My dear Seraphina, Marguerite simpered during afternoon tea, you simply must tell me more about your northern estates. I've always found the frontier so fascinating. Ella smiled, suppressing the urge to drive her silver tea fork through Marguerite's throat. Perhaps we could discuss it privately sometime. There are certain opportunities I'd love to share with someone of your discernment. Throughout it all, she felt Valerius watching from a distance, his silver eyes following her performances with obvious entertainment. He maintained his distance but always seemed to be there, lounging against pillars or observing from balconies, a knowing smirk playing at his lips. On the third night, torches blazed in the palace gardens, casting dancing shadows across elaborate topiaries and marble fountains. The midnight banquet was in full swing. Music drifted through the air, mixing with laughter and the clink of crystal glasses. Ella had chosen her moment perfectly. Lady Marguerite, she murmured, approaching her stepmother with practiced grace. The poisoned blade pressed against her thigh through a hidden pocket in her midnight blue gown. Might I have a word? I've received some rather interesting information about Lord Aldrich that you should hear. Marguerite's eyes lit with greedy curiosity. Of course, anything that might affect her upcoming marriage to the powerful Alpha would catch her attention. Lead the way, dear. Ella guided them away from the crowds, down a winding path between towering rose hedges. The music faded, replaced by the gentle splash of a hidden fountain. Perfect. Secluded enough that no one would hear the struggle, close enough to the party that the body would be found before dawn. Her fingers closed around the blade's hilt. Now then, Marguerite said. What's this about Aldrich? Ella whirled, drawing the blade in one fluid motion, only to have her wrist caught in an iron grip. Valerius materialized from the shadows like a nightmare, his fingers pressing into tendons until she was forced to drop the weapon. Lady Seraphina, he called out loudly, his voice carrying to where several nobles lingered at the edge of the garden. You accept my invitation? How wonderful! Before Ella could process what was happening, he had swept her away from a confused Marguerite, moving with supernatural speed through the palace corridors. They didn't stop until they reached his private wing, a luxurious suite of rooms decorated in black and silver. He released her arm and locked the door. "That was sloppy," he chided, turning to face her. "Poison blade? Really? How disappointingly conventional." Ella backed away, her heart racing. "You said you wouldn't interfere. I said I'd watch you work, and frankly, your work tonight was amateur at best." He reached into his jacket and withdrew something that made her blood run cold. Her enchanted glass slipper, the focus of Malakar's transformation spell. Now this, on the other hand, this is far more interesting. "How did you get it? Please. You think I haven't noticed you removing it each night? Hiding it under your mattress?" He turned the delicate shoe, watching it catch the lamplight. "Demon magic always needs a focus. Break this and poof, no more Lady Seraphina." Ella lunged for the slipper, but Valerius easily held it out of reach. "Give it back." "I have a better idea." His smile was all predator. "Work for me. 4 more days as my personal assassin and bed warmer. I'll help you kill Marguerite properly. No amateur poisonings, but a death worthy of the vengeance you've carried for 3 years. And when Malakar comes to collect," his eyes glittered, "I'll help you escape the demon's claim." "You can't break a demon's contract." "Can't I?" He stepped closer, radiating dangerous power. "I've existed for centuries, little wolf. I know things about demon magic that would terrify you." He dangled the slipper tauntingly. "Of course, if you prefer, I could just shatter this now. See how long you last as a powerless Omega surrounded by enemies." Ella's mind raced. She had no choice. Without the slipper, she'd lose everything. But there was something in Valerius's eyes, something beyond mere amusement. He wanted this bargain too much. "Why?" she demanded. "Why help me at all?" "Because you're exquisite," he said simply. "The rage in you, the willingness to do anything for revenge. I want to shape that, to watch you become something truly deadly." He extended his free hand. "Do we have a deal?" Ella stared at his offered hand, knowing she was trading one devil's bargain for another. But if he could truly help her escape both Marguerite and Malakar. She placed her hand in his. "Deal." Valerius led Ella down a spiraling stone staircase deep beneath his private wing. The air grew cooler, torchlight casting dancing shadows on ancient walls. They emerged into a vast training chamber, the floor covered in thick mats, weapons displayed on the walls. "Strip," he commanded casually. Ella stiffened. "What?" "To shift forms, obviously." His silver eyes glinted with amusement. "Unless you plan to destroy that lovely gown when you transform, I assumed you'd want to keep your borrowed finery intact." Cheeks burning, Ella retreated behind a changing screen. She removed her dress carefully, leaving only her silk slip. "Turn around." "Such modesty," he drawled, but she heard him move away. "Hurry up. We have much to cover." Ella closed her eyes, reaching for her wolf. After 3 years of emptiness, the sensation of shifting was both familiar and strange. Her bones cracked and reformed, midnight black fur rippling across her skin. When she padded out from behind the screen, she found Valerius had also shifted. His wolf form was massive, silver black fur gleaming in the torchlight, nearly twice her size. Without warning, he lunged. Ella barely dodged his snapping jaws, instinct sending her rolling across the mat. She came up snarling, but he was already behind her, massive paw striking her flank and sending her sprawling. "Too slow," his voice echoed in her mind through their shared alpha power. "You telegraph your moves. 3 years of being powerless has made you sloppy." They sparred for hours, Valerius ruthlessly exploiting every weakness, forcing her to adapt or suffer the consequences. By the time he allowed her to shift back, Ella's muscles screamed with exhaustion. "Drink," he ordered, handing her a crystal goblet of water as she emerged from behind the screen, fully dressed. Now comes the more important lesson. He led her to a small study adjacent to the training room, walls lined with books and scrolls. A detailed map of the kingdom covered one table, various noble houses marked with different colored pins. The blue pins mark those who've ordered assassinations in the past year, he explained, trailing his fingers across the map. Red for treason, black for those actively plotting against me. His smile was razor-sharp. The art of murder isn't just about physical skill, it's about knowing when and how to strike for maximum effect. "Is that why you stopped me from killing Marguerite?" Ella asked. "Because the timing was wrong?" "Partly. A clumsy poisoning at my event would have raised questions. The nobles would assume I sanctioned it, creating political complications. Moreover, your stepmother would become a tragic figure. The poor widow murdered at a royal gathering." He caught her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "When we kill her, it will be done properly. No one will ever prove it wasn't natural causes." His casual use of "we" sent an unexpected shiver through her. He released her chin but let his fingers trail down her neck, a possessive touch that made her wolf stir restlessly. "Come, my little wolf," he said. "Time for your next test." That evening, Valerius hosted an intimate dinner party in his private dining room. Ella's heart nearly stopped when she saw Marguerite among the dozen guests. "You'll serve the wine," Valerius murmured in her ear, pressing a crystal decanter into her hands. "And you'll smile while doing it." Ella moved around the table mechanically, filling goblets while noble wolves discussed politics and gossip. When she reached Marguerite, her hands shook slightly. "Thank you, dear," Marguerite said absently, barely glancing at her. Ella felt Valerius watching, knew this was a test of control. She forced her lips into a pleasant smile, ignoring the rage that screamed for her to pour the wine down Marguerite's throat until she choked. "Well done," Valerius praised later, after the guests had gone. "You're learning." "I wanted to kill her," Ella admitted. "Every second, every breath, I wanted to destroy her." "I know." He stepped close, inhaling deeply near her throat. "I could smell your rage, but you controlled it, channeled it." His fingers brushed her cheek. "That's what separates mere killers from true assassins. Anyone can murder in anger. Art requires patience." Ella shivered at his touch, hating how her body responded to his proximity, even as her mind screamed danger. "You enjoy this, don't you? Teaching me to be a monster?" "My little wolf," he chuckled darkly. "I'm simply helping you become what you already are." "Tomorrow's hunt presents a perfect opportunity," Valerius said, spreading a detailed map of the hunting grounds across his desk. "Lord Corvin Ashwood has become inconvenient." Ella stood beside him, still sore from their training session. "What do you mean?" "He's been gathering support among the lesser packs, questioning my decisions." Valerius's finger traced a path through the forest. "During the hunt, he'll take his usual route through the northern ravine. You'll ensure he doesn't return." "What?" Ella stepped back. "That wasn't our deal. I agreed to help you in exchange for killing Marguerite." Valerius moved with supernatural speed, pinning her against the wall. His silver eyes blazed. "You agreed to serve me, little wolf. Or have you forgotten our arrangement?" His fingers wrapped around her throat, not squeezing, but reminding her of his power. "If you want my help destroying your stepmother, you'll prove your loyalty first." "This is murder," she whispered. "And what you planned for Marguerite wasn't?" He released her throat but stayed close, his scent overwhelming her senses. "At least this death serves a purpose beyond revenge. Corvin's schemes threaten the stability of my territory. Sometimes the crown requires blood to keep its shine." The next morning, Ella joined the hunting party, her borrowed finery replaced by practical riding leathers. Her enhanced senses picked up Lord Corvin's scent easily, wood smoke, and aged whiskey. She tracked him through the misty forest, her wolf thrilling at the chase despite her human conscience's protests. The northern ravine was steep and treacherous, perfect for staging an accident. Ella watched from the shadows as Corvin separated from his guards, pursuing a deer. Her wolf form moved silently through the underbrush, muscle memory from their training sessions guiding her movements. When she struck, it was swift and brutal. Her enhanced strength let her drag him from his horse, her jaws closing around his throat before he could cry out. Blood filled her mouth, hot and metallic. The kill was messy, deliberate, just as Valerius had instructed. No clean assassination, but the savage attack of a wild animal. Ella retreated into the trees, her black fur blending with the shadows. She listened as Corvin's guards discovered his body, their shouts of alarm echoing through the forest. Her wolf sang with satisfaction, but her human mind recoiled at how natural it had felt. How right. She found a stream to wash away the evidence, but her paws wouldn't stop shaking. The taste of death lingered on her tongue. Magnificent, a familiar voice purred. Ella whirled to find Valerius watching her from the bank, his silver eyes gleaming. She hadn't even heard him approach. He held out a cloth, and she realized she had shifted back to human form without consciously deciding to. She wrapped the cloth around herself, unable to meet his gaze. I killed him. Yes. Valerius stepped closer, tilting her chin up. And you did it beautifully. His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away a streak of dried blood she had missed. The gentle touch contrasted sharply with the violence she had just committed. Her wolf responded to his proximity, wanting to lean into his hand even as her mind screamed to pull away. The rush of the hunt, he murmured, the thrill of the kill. It calls to something primal in us, doesn't it? Something you've denied for too long. I didn't want to enjoy it, Ella whispered, but you did. His fingers traced down her jaw. I watched you stalk him, saw how naturally you moved. You were born for this, little wolf, born to hunt, to kill. He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. You're magnificent. Something dangerous stirred in Ella's chest at his words, a warmth she didn't dare name. She told herself it was just the residual bloodlust, the intoxicating power of the kill. But when Valerius's hand slid to her neck, his thumb resting over her pulse, she couldn't deny how her heart raced at his touch. The grand ballroom glittered with hundreds of candles, their light catching on ornate masks and jewels as nobles swirled across the marble floor. Ella adjusted her own mask, a delicate creation of black lace and silver threads that matched her midnight gown. After 4 days at court, she moved with practiced grace among the elite, no longer the awkward servant girl playing dress-up. But something was wrong. Her skin felt too tight, her wolf restless beneath the surface. Every time Valerius entered her awareness, heat flooded her veins. She tried to focus on watching Marguerite, who danced with her new fiancé across the room, but her attention kept drifting to the prince. He cut an imposing figure in black formal wear, his silver mask emphasizing those predatory eyes. Throughout the evening, she felt his gaze following her, making her pulse quicken. When their paths crossed during a dance, the brief brush of his hand against her waist sent electricity down her spine. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself, retreating to the edge of the crowd. It's just fear, natural reaction to an alpha's power. But she knew that wasn't true. She'd faced other alphas without this maddening pull, this bone-deep need to be closer. Running from me, little wolf? Ella spun to find Valerius directly behind her, moving with that impossible silence. Before she could respond, his hand closed around her wrist, and he pulled her through a hidden door into a shadowed alcove. What are you? Her protest cut off as he pressed her against the wall, caging her with his body. The smell of him, pine needles and winter wind and something darkly male, made her dizzy. I've been patient, he murmured, removing both their masks. Watching you fight this, deny what's building between us. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she shuddered. "But I'm tired of waiting." When he kissed her, the world exploded. Heat seared through her body, her wolf howling in recognition. His lips were demanding, possessive, claiming her mouth like he owned it. And maybe he did, because Ella found herself kissing him back with equal hunger, her fingers tangling in his hair. He broke away only to trail kisses down her throat. "Do you feel it?" he growled against her skin. "The mate bond pulling us together? You were always meant to be mine, Ella. From the moment you stepped into my court, I knew." "No," she gasped, even as her body arched into his touch. "This can't... You're a monster?" He laughed darkly. "Yes, but you're becoming one too, aren't you? I've watched you embrace the darkness, revel in it." His hand slid down her side, setting her nerves on fire. "Stop fighting this." And God help her, she did. When he kissed her again, she surrendered completely. The mate bond sang between them, drowning out every rational thought. She barely registered him transporting them to his chambers until her back hit silk sheets. "Beautiful," he breathed, looking down at her with silver eyes that blazed with possession. "My perfect, savage mate." Their coupling was passionate and primal, a claiming that spoke to something ancient in their wolves. Ella lost herself in sensation, in the feeling of finally being whole after years of emptiness. Every touch, every kiss felt inevitable, like her whole life had been leading to this moment. After they lay tangled in the sheets, Valerius trailing his fingers along her spine. "I'll give you everything," he murmured against her hair. "Power, revenge, a crown. We'll rule this kingdom together, make them all kneel before us." Ella curled closer, her wolf purring at his promises. The demon's bargain suddenly seemed less like a curse and more like destiny. Maybe this was where she was always meant to end up, in the arms of a monster who saw her darkness and called it beautiful. "You'll never be powerless again," Valerius continued, his voice hypnotic in the darkness. "Never be anyone's victim. Together, we'll be unstoppable." She should have been terrified by the future he described. Instead, she found herself wanting it with an intensity that scared her. The mate bond hummed between them, turning fear to desire, doubt to certainty. For the first time since her father's death, Ella felt hope bloom in her chest, dark and dangerous as a poisoned flower, but hope nonetheless. Sunlight filtered through heavy velvet curtains when Ella stirred, her body pleasantly sore from the previous night's activities. The silk sheets felt cool against her bare skin, but the space beside her was empty. She sat up slowly, memories flooding back, Valerius's touches, his promises, the overwhelming sensation of their supposed mate bond. Voices drifted from the adjacent chamber, making her wolf's ears prick up. She recognized Valerius's distinctive, smooth tone, though he spoke in lower volumes than usual. "The transformation is proceeding exactly as planned," Valerius was saying, "though I must admit even I'm impressed by how perfectly she's falling into line." A second voice, Lord Thorn, Valerius's shadow and closest advisor, responded with a dry chuckle. "And the bond? She truly believes it's real?" "Malakar's enchantment is working perfectly," Valerius confirmed. "She's bonding to me exactly as planned. You should have seen her last night, so desperate for connection, so eager to believe she's found her destiny. The demon's magic makes her feel everything I want her to feel." Ella's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp as ice spread through her veins. The mate bond, that overwhelming pull, the sense of rightness, the desperate need. It was all artificial, just another layer of manipulation, another chain to bind her. "And once the week is over?" Thorn asked. "She'll be mine completely," Valerius replied. "Broken to my will, but keeping that delicious spark of darkness that makes her so entertaining. The perfect weapon, bound by false love rather than mere obedience. Malakar outdid himself with this one." Ella slipped from the bed silently, her hands shaking as she pulled on her dress from the night before. Her mind raced, trying to process this betrayal while fighting against the artificial emotions still trying to make her run back to Valerius's arms. The prince and his advisor moved away, their voices becoming muffled. Once certain they were occupied elsewhere, Ella crept into Valerius's private study. She had to know how deep this deception went. The room was immaculate, all dark wood and leather-bound books, but her attention fixed on the massive desk. With trembling fingers, she began searching through documents, correspondence, anything that might reveal the truth. In the bottom drawer, she found it, letters between Valerius and Malachar, dozens of them, dating back months before she ever reached the crossroads. Her vision blurred as she read. "The girl continues to show promising potential," one letter stated in elegant script. "Her stepmother's cruelty provides excellent motivation, and 3 years of abuse have created the perfect foundation of desperation. When she finally breaks, she'll be ready for molding." Another, "The hunt provides an ideal setting. We'll arrange for Marguerite's invitation, ensuring the target is present. The glass slipper will serve as both focus and shackle. She'll believe it holds her enchantment, never suspecting it's actually binding her to you." And finally, in Valerius's own hand, "The false mate bond is ingenious. Physical attraction she might resist, but this, the feeling of finally belonging, of being completed, she'll surrender completely, thinking she's found her destiny rather than her cage." Ella sank to her knees, the papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. It had all been orchestrated, every moment of hope, every promise of power, every touch that made her feel whole. She wasn't a destined mate or even a useful ally. She was a puppet, and Valerius and Malachar had spent months weaving her strings. The worst part was that even knowing the truth, she could still feel the false bond pulling at her, trying to draw her back to Valerius. Her wolf whined, wanting to deny the evidence before her, wanting to believe in the beautiful lie of last night. But the ice in her veins had spread to her heart, freezing those artificial feelings into something sharp and painful. The glass slipper sat on a nearby shelf, catching the morning light. She stared at it, remembering how she'd thought it was her salvation when Valerius had taken it. Now she recognized it for what it truly was, not just a focus for Malachar's power, but a collar, binding her to a master who had orchestrated her entire fall from the beginning. Ella's hands shook as she carefully replaced the letters in Valerius's desk, arranging everything exactly as she'd found it. Her mind raced, calculating options while fighting against the artificial warmth that still tried to pull her toward him. The false mate bond felt like poison honey in her veins, sickeningly sweet, making her want to forgive, to surrender, to crawl back into his arms despite knowing it was all a lie. She caught her reflection in a mirror, flushed cheeks, kiss-bruised lips, looking every bit the besotted mate she was supposed to be. Perfect. She could use that. Taking a deep breath, Ella smoothed her dress and schooled her features into the soft, adoring expression she'd worn last night. If Valerius wanted a perfectly crafted weapon, she'd give him one, pointed straight at his heart. The grand feast that evening was a masterpiece of excess, tables groaning with rare meats, wine flowing freely, nobles dressed in their finest as musicians played and couples danced. Ella made her entrance on Valerius's arm, feeling the envious stares of the court ladies who'd hoped to catch the prince's attention. "You're unusually quiet tonight, little wolf," Valerius murmured, his thumb stroking possessive circles on her wrist. The touch sent sparks through her body. Artificial sparks, she reminded herself fiercely. Ella turned to him with carefully manufactured shyness. "Just overwhelmed," she whispered. "Everything feels so intense since last night." She let vulnerability show in her eyes, knowing he'd interpret it as the bond taking hold rather than the raw pain of betrayal. His pleased smile made her stomach turn, but she leaned into his touch anyway. Throughout dinner, she played her role flawlessly, laughing at his dark jokes, accepting bites of food from his fingers, letting him pull her closer whenever other alphas looked her way too long. Each gesture felt like swallowing glass, but she forced herself to appear eager, devoted. "You're proving quite the quick study," he purred in her ear as they watched nobles dancing. "I had such plans for molding you, but you're already exceeding expectations." Ella suppressed a shudder and tilted her head, exposing her neck in submission. "I only want to please you," she said softly. "Everything else seems less important now." The words tasted like ash, but Valerius's eyes darkened with satisfaction. He pulled her onto the dance floor, one hand possessive on her waist as they moved to the music. "Then perhaps it's time we discussed your stepmother," he said. Ella's heart skipped. This was it, the opening she needed. She kept her voice carefully hopeful. "You'll help me?" "Tomorrow night, at the masquerade," he confirmed. "A public confrontation, where you'll reveal yourself and reclaim your title. I'll stand as witness to your right as Edmund's heir." His smile turned cruel. "Marguerite will have nowhere to run when my support legitimizes your claim." "It's perfect," Ella breathed, letting real tears shine in her eyes. Let him think they were grateful tears, not fury given liquid form. "I don't deserve such kindness." "Oh, my little wolf," he chuckled, pulling her closer. "You deserve everything I'm going to give you." She pressed her face to his chest, hiding her expression as rage and artificial desire warred inside her. The false bond urged her to melt into him, to accept his protection and power. But underneath that magical compulsion, her true feelings crystallized into steel-sharp purpose. She would take everything he offered, his help, his knowledge, his power, and turn it against both him and Malachar. Yet even as she plotted, an unsettling doubt crept in. When Valerius's fingers threaded through her hair, when his scent wrapped around her like darkness made tangible, something deeper than the artificial bond stirred. Something that recognized the monster in him and wanted it anyway, that saw his cruelty and found it beautiful. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing her distraction. Ella lifted her head and smiled, letting that dangerous attraction show through. It made her performance more convincing, after all. "About how perfectly you planned everything," she said truthfully, though not in the way he'd assume. "About fate bringing us together." His pleased laugh vibrated through her, and Ella wondered if it was only the enchantment making her shiver in response. She pushed the thought away. She couldn't afford such doubts, not when she needed every scrap of hatred and rage to fuel her through what came next. Tomorrow night would change everything. She just had to keep playing her role until then, ignoring the treacherous whisper in her heart that suggested not all her feelings for Valerius were as false as his mate bond. The masquerade ballroom glittered like a dream made of starlight and shadow. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the marble floors, while hundreds of candles created an otherworldly glow. Nobles in elaborate costumes and intricate masks swirled through the space like exotic birds, their laughter and whispers creating a symphony of secrets. Ella's midnight blue gown whispered against the floor as she entered on Valerius's arm. The rubies at her throat caught the light like drops of fresh blood. His gift, delivered that morning with a note that read, "For tonight's performance." Her wolf mask, crafted of delicate silver filigree, concealed the calculated hatred in her eyes as she scanned the crowd. There, Marguerite, wearing an emerald peacock costume that dripped with stolen jewels. She stood near the center of the room with Lord Aldrich, holding court among her social circle. The sight of her stepmother's smug smile behind her mask made Ella's fingers tighten on Valerius's arm. "Patience, little wolf," he murmured, his own black devil's mask gleaming. "The hunt is sweetest when the prey feels safe." They moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting bows and curtsies from lesser nobles who recognized the prince even behind his mask. Ella felt the false mate bond humming between them, urging her to lean into his touch, to trust his guidance. She used that artificial warmth to fuel her smile, letting everyone see exactly what they expected: the prince's newest paramour, drunk on power and affection. The orchestra played, couples danced, and wine flowed freely as the minutes ticked by. Ella's heart thundered harder with each chime of the clock. This was what she'd wanted for 3 years: revenge, justice, her stepmother's destruction. So why did it feel like she was the one walking into a trap? At precisely 11, Valerius raised his hand. The music died instantly, the dancers froze, and all eyes turned to the prince. "My honored guests," his voice carried effortlessly through the silent hall, "we have a matter of justice to address before our final feast." He turned to Ella, his silver eyes gleaming behind his mask. With deliberate ceremony, he lifted her wolf mask away, revealing her face to the gasping crowd. Then he removed his own, standing unmasked before his subjects. "I present to you not Lady Seraphina of the North, but Ella Ashbourne, rightful heir to the Ashbourne lands and pack, daughter of Alpha Edmund Ashbourne, whose murder has gone unpunished for 3 years." The words rang through the chamber like a death knell. Near the center of the room, Marguerite went very still. Ella stepped forward, chin high, voice clear and cold as winter. "Lady Marguerite Ashbourne, remove your mask. Face the crimes you committed against my father and our pack." For a moment, Marguerite tried to maintain her composure, laughing as if it were all a jest. But when she saw the hard faces of the courtiers around her, the way they stepped back from her like she was diseased, her facade cracked. "This is absurd," she sputtered. "This impostor—" "We have evidence," Valerius cut in smoothly. He gestured, and his guards appeared with a leather folio. "Financial records showing systematic theft of Ashbourne assets, testimonies from servants who witnessed Edmund's poisoning, and most damning—" He pulled out a familiar crystal vial, the remains of the wolfsbane-laced wine that killed him, preserved by a guilty maid's conscience. Marguerite's mask slipped, revealing wild eyes. "You can't, I am Lady Ashbourne." "You are a murderer," Ella's voice cracked like a whip. "A thief who killed my father, stole my birthright, and tried to break me." She advanced on her stepmother, power rolling off her in waves. "But I am my father's daughter. I am Alpha Edmund's heir, and I will take back everything you stole." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers as Marguerite finally shattered. She fell to her knees, mask clattering to the floor, makeup running with desperate tears. "Please," she begged, reaching for Ella's skirts. "I can explain. It wasn't meant. I never—" Ella stepped back from her grasping hands, savage satisfaction coursing through her veins. 3 years of scrubbing floors, of enduring abuse and mockery, of playing the broken victim, all worth it to see Marguerite crawling before her now. "Guards!" Valerius commanded. "Take Lady Marguerite to the dungeons. She will face formal charges for murder and treason." As the guards dragged her stepmother away, Marguerite's screams echoing through the ballroom, Ella felt Valerius's hand settle possessively on her waist. She let herself lean into him, playing her role to perfection, even as her mind raced ahead to what came next. The 6th night was ending. Tomorrow was the 7th, her last night before Malachar came to collect his price. Marguerite's hysterical screams faded as the guards dragged her away, leaving behind a buzzing excitement in the grand ballroom. Nobles clustered together, whispering furiously behind their masks about this extraordinary turn of events. The lost Ashbourne heir returned in triumph. Such delicious scandal, such perfect drama for the hunt's final nights. But before the gossip could build to a crescendo, Valerius raised his hand once more. The crowd fell silent instantly, trained by centuries of conditioning to respond to their prince's command. My dear guests, his voice carried easily through the hushed space, the night's revelations are not yet complete. Ella felt his grip tighten slightly on her waist, drawing her closer to his side. Her heart stuttered. This wasn't part of their discussed plan. What game was he playing now? "You've witnessed justice served, a noble line restored," Valerius continued, his silver eyes sweeping the assembly. "But fate has woven an even greater design. When Ella Ashbourne came to my hunt, she brought not just a quest for vengeance, but an answer to my own long search." He turned to face her fully then, taking both her hands in his. Despite everything she knew about his manipulation, about the false mate bond, Ella felt that magnetic pull between them surge. Her wolf responded instinctively to his presence, wanting to lean in, to bare her throat, to claim and be claimed. "My lords and ladies, I present to you not just the heir of House Ashbourne, but my chosen mate, my future Luna Queen." The words rang through the ballroom like thunder. Gasps and exclamations of shock rippled through the crowd. Ella's own breath caught in her throat. This was madness. This was too much, too fast. And yet, a servant appeared bearing a cushion of black velvet. Upon it rested a crown unlike any Ella had ever seen. Delicate silver worked into thorns and twisted vines, set with black diamonds that seemed to swallow light. It was beautiful and terrible, like Valerius himself. "The crown has waited centuries for the right queen," Valerius announced, lifting it carefully. "One who understands that true power requires both beauty and thorns, both mercy and cruelty." His eyes locked with hers, intense and consuming. "One who can match my darkness with her own." The mate bond pulsed between them, and Ella felt dizzy with conflicting emotions. Part of her screamed that this was another trap, another layer of his schemes with Malachar. But another part, the part that had tasted power and found she craved more, whispered that maybe the trap had become a door. Maybe his manipulation had unveiled something real in both of them. "Ella Ashbourne," Valerius's voice softened, meant for her although the entire court strained to hear. "Will you accept this crown, this throne, this bond? Will you rule at my side as my mate and queen?" Time seemed to crystallize around them. Ella was acutely aware of hundreds of eyes watching, of the weight of this moment, of all paths leading to this choice. She thought of the broken servant girl she'd been, of the vengeance-driven creature she'd become, of the queen she could be. "Yes," she heard herself say, the word ringing clear and true. "I accept." Valerius smiled, that dangerous, beautiful smile that had first caught her attention across the great hall. He placed the crown of thorns carefully on her head. It settled like it had been made for her, its weight both burden and blessing. The court erupted in applause and cheers as Valerius pulled her into a kiss. His lips claimed hers with passionate possession, and Ella surrendered to it completely. In that perfect moment, she felt invincible, her stepmother defeated, her name restored, a crown on her head, and the most powerful alpha in the kingdom declaring her his mate. When they finally parted, the celebration was in full swing. Music swelled, wine flowed, and nobles rushed to offer congratulations to their newly announced future queen. Ella accepted their bows and flattery with graceful poise, while Valerius kept her close against his side, his pride and possession evident in every touch. Standing there in her midnight gown and crown of thorns, Ella felt like she was living inside a dark fairy tale. She had defeated the wicked stepmother, won back her kingdom, and captured the heart of the dangerous prince. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of, wrapped in shadows and power instead of light and innocence. For one shining, perfect moment, she let herself believe in happily ever after. The grand ballroom sparkled with celebration, glasses clinking and laughter echoing off marble walls. Ella stood beside Valerius, accepting congratulations from what felt like an endless stream of nobles when the first bell of midnight rang out. Too early, hours too early. The sound shuddered through her bones, wrong and distorted. Before the echo faded, every candle in the massive ballroom snuffed out simultaneously. Darkness crashed over the crowd like a wave, broken only by an otherworldly green glow that pulsed from the center of the room. Gasps and screams filled the air as nobles stumbled back. The temperature plummeted, frost crystallizing on wine glasses and jewelry. In the sickly emerald light, Ella watched Malachar materialize, beautiful and terrible as the first time she'd seen the demon at the crossroads, but now radiating power that made even Valerius's presence feel dim in comparison. What a lovely celebration! Malachar's voice slid through the air like silk over steel. Such a perfect moment to collect what's owed. The demon's molten gold eyes fixed on Ella, and she felt her borrowed beauty begin to ripple, like a reflection disturbed by stones thrown in water. Valerius's grip on her waist tightened possessively. "The 7 nights aren't complete," Ella protested, though her voice shook. "I still have until tomorrow's midnight." Malachar's laugh cut through her words, sharp as breaking glass. "Oh, sweet girl, did you think that was still our bargain? The terms changed the moment you accepted his claim." The demon gestured to Valerius with elegant menace. "Your prince and I struck our own deal months ago. Everything, your desperate flight to the crossroads, your transformation, this grand hunt, it was all carefully orchestrated." The glass slipper materialized in Malachar's hand, glowing with contained power. This was never about 7 nights of borrowed time. It was about choice. Your choice. By publicly accepting Valerius as mate, by surrendering to the false bond we created, you fulfilled the final condition. Your soul isn't mine temporarily, it's his eternally. Horror crawled up Ella's spine as understanding dawned. She tried to pull away from Valerius, but his grip was unbreakable. When she looked up at him, his silver eyes held no remorse, only dark satisfaction. "Now," Malachar purred, "let's strip away the illusions, shall we?" The demon crushed the glass slipper in one fluid motion. It shattered with a sound like screaming, releasing a wave of magic that slammed into Ella like a physical blow. She felt her borrowed beauty dissolving, magic unraveling from her skin like threads being pulled from fabric. Her midnight gown remained, but the woman wearing it transformed, returning to her natural self, the one she'd been before Malachar's enchantment. But the physical change wasn't what brought Ella to her knees. As the false glamour faded, she felt something else solidify inside her. The mate bond she'd thought was artificial, crystallizing into something permanent and unbreakable. It burned through her blood like molten metal being forged, binding her to Valerius with chains stronger than any magic. This wasn't the seductive pull she'd felt before. This was absolute, irreversible, and terrifyingly real. "The enchantment is gone," Malachar announced to the stunned court, "but the bond remains, no longer a trick of magic, but something far more binding, created by choice, sealed by surrender, and empowered by my magic. A true mate bond, forged in darkness instead of fated by the moon." Ella's wolf howled inside her, recognizing the truth of it. She could feel Valerius through the bond now, his triumph and possession washing over her in waves. This had been his plan all along, not just to trap her, but to claim her so completely that escape would be impossible. The demon's golden eyes glowed with satisfaction as chaos erupted in the ballroom. Nobles pushed and shoved, trying to flee the supernatural display. Some fell to their knees in terror, others stood frozen in horrified fascination. Through it all, Valerius held Ella steady, his touch both claiming and supporting as she struggled with the overwhelming sensation of their newly forged bond. "The pact is complete," Malachar declared. "The price is paid. May you both enjoy your eternity of darkness." The last echoes of Malakar's laughter faded as green mist dissipated from the ballroom. Nobles stumbled over each other, their elegant masks askew, whispers and shocked gasps filling the chilled air. Ella stood frozen, feeling stripped bare before their stares, not just physically returned to her natural form, but emotionally flayed by the revelation of Valerius's manipulation. The celebration is concluded. Valerius's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone out. Now. No one dared disobey. The crowd scattered like leaves in a storm, leaving only the sound of rushing footsteps and rustling silk. Before Ella could gather her thoughts, Valerius's hand clamped around her arm. He dragged her through torchlit corridors, his grip bruising even through the midnight silk of her gown. Her new reality crashed over her with each step, the mate bond humming between them, no longer a gentle pull, but an unbreakable chain. They reached his private chambers, and he practically threw her inside, slamming the door behind them. Ella stumbled but caught herself, whirling to face him as tears of rage burned in her eyes. "You planned this," she spat. "All of it, from the very beginning." Valerius leaned against the door, watching her with those calculating silver eyes. Through their bond, she felt only calm satisfaction. No guilt, no shame. "You manipulated everything!" Her voice rose to a scream. "The crossroads wasn't an accident. You knew I'd go to Malakar. You orchestrated my entire revenge plot just to trap me." "Yes." His simple admission hit harder than any denial could have. "Why?" The word tore from her throat. "Was it amusing to watch me suffer? To let me think I was finally claiming justice, only to discover I was just your puppet?" Valerius pushed away from the door, stalking toward her with predatory grace. "I needed someone specific," he said, his voice perfectly controlled. "Someone with the right combination of qualities. Power in their bloodline, yes, but more importantly, someone broken enough to reshape, desperate enough to embrace darkness, and strong enough to survive the transformation." He circled her slowly, and Ella fought not to shrink away. "When Malakar told me about the Alpha's daughter, stripped of her wolf and burning for revenge, I knew I'd found my perfect match. Everything else was just careful planning." "I was a project to you," Ella whispered, "a weapon to forge." At first, he stopped in front of her, reaching out to trace her jawline with one finger. "But you exceeded every expectation. Your cunning, your adaptability, the way you embraced each lesson in darkness. You became more than a weapon. You became exactly what I needed." Ella tried to jerk away from his touch, but the mate bond flared between them. She gasped as sensations flooded through her, his possessive satisfaction, his genuine admiration, his dark desire. The bond wasn't just emotions, it was a living connection, singing with power that Malakar's magic had transformed from artificial to absolutely real. "No," she choked out, even as her wolf stirred with recognition. "This isn't real. It can't be real." "But it is." Valerius cupped her face in his hands, and she hated how her body leaned into his touch. "The bond is complete, forged by choice and sealed by magic far older than either of us. You're mine now, little wolf. Truly, irrevocably mine." "I hate you," she whispered, but the bond betrayed her, carrying the lie of those words to both of them. "You have two choices, Ella." His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. "Fight this forever. Fight me forever. And let the bond torture us both with what could have been. Or," his voice dropped lower, hypnotic, "accept what you've become. Rule at my side willingly. Embrace the darkness you chose with every step that led you here." Through the bond, she felt the truth of his words. He wouldn't force her submission, wouldn't demand her surrender. He would let her fight, let her hate him, let her suffer the bond's pull for eternity if she chose, but he would never let her go. "Get out!" Ella's voice cracked like broken glass. Get out! She hurled a crystal decanter at Valerius, who simply stepped aside, letting it shatter against the wall. His silver eyes watched her with infuriating patience as she raged, destroying everything within reach in his opulent chambers. "I'll fight you forever," she snarled. "I don't care what this bond does to me." "As you wish, little wolf." He left her there, surrounded by destruction. Over the next day, Ella tried everything to break free. She ran for the forest gates 3 times, only to double over in agony as the magical tether yanked her back toward the estate. She refused the elaborate meals sent to her new chambers, no longer his suite, but a gilded prison with spelled locks. She tried willing the bond to break through sheer determination, focusing all her hatred into severing the connection. But the bond remained, a constant hum beneath her skin. Worse, it flowed both ways. She felt everything Valerius felt, no matter how she tried to block it out. His frustration when she rejected another meal, his possessive spike of satisfaction whenever the bond pulled her back from escape attempts, and something else, something that made her wolf stir with interest, genuine desire, raw and unfiltered, nothing like the calculated seduction he'd used to manipulate her before. That unsettled her more than anything else. She could handle his cruelty, his manipulation, his cold control. But these flashes of authentic feeling threatened to complicate her hatred. Night fell, and Ella sat curled in her chamber's window seat, watching moonlight spill across the gardens. The lock clicked, and she tensed as Valerius entered. But he wasn't alone. 2 guards dragged a struggling figure between them. Marguerite, her fine clothes torn, her face bruised, iron shackles binding her wrists. They forced her to her knees on the carpet. "A gift," Valerius said softly. "Your stepmother's life, yours to end however you choose. Complete your revenge, little wolf." Ella stared at Marguerite's face, the face that had smiled while poisoning her father, had laughed while destroying her life. "No," she said. "I won't give you the satisfaction." Marguerite's laugh was ugly, desperate. "Still weak," she spat. "Still the pathetic little girl who couldn't save her father, couldn't protect her pack, couldn't even keep her own wolf. You needed a demon's magic and a monster's protection just to face me." Something dark unfurled in Ella's chest. The bond thrummed with Valerius's anticipation, but she barely noticed. She felt her wolf rising, not the borrowed power from Malakar's spell, but her true wolf, restored and transformed by demon magic she'd purchased with her own soul. This power was hers now, bought and paid for in full. The shift rippled through her, faster and smoother than ever before. Her midnight black wolf emerged, larger than she remembered, burning with power that was no longer borrowed, but belonged to her completely. Marguerite's eyes widened with real fear at last. Ella lunged, fangs finding her stepmother's throat. Blood filled her mouth, hot and metallic, and her wolf howled in savage triumph. She felt bones crack, heard the final desperate gurgle, tasted victory and vengeance and power all at once. When she shifted back to human form, she knelt naked in a pool of blood, her entire body trembling, not with horror or revulsion, but with the pure electric thrill of it. She looked up at Valerius, who watched her with dark satisfaction. Understanding crashed over her like ice water. This was exactly what he'd wanted, not just to break her, but to remake her, to show her that she'd chosen this darkness willingly, step by step, even before the bond was forged. Every decision that led her here had been hers. Summoning the demon, accepting his bargain, taking her first kill in the forest, surrendering to Valerius's seduction. She'd become the monster he wanted, not because he forced her, but because some part of her had wanted it too. Ella stood before the gilded mirror in her chambers, still naked and covered in Marguerite's blood. The metallic scent filled her nostrils, mixing with the lingering taste on her tongue. She should feel disgusted, horrified, Some part of her kept waiting for revulsion to set in, for the crushing weight of what she'd done to break her. Instead, she felt clear, like fog lifting from a forest at dawn. Her reflection stared back with unblinking amber eyes. Blood painted her skin in abstract patterns, and atop her dark hair sat the silver crown of thorns Valerius had placed there at the masquerade. The sight should have been grotesque, a murdered king's daughter transformed into something monstrous. But as she studied herself, really looked at the woman she'd become, understanding crystallized with brutal clarity. This wasn't Malakar's magic anymore. This wasn't Valerius's manipulation. This was her. She traced the dried blood on her collarbone, remembering how her wolf had gloried in the kill. No one had forced her teeth into Marguerite's throat. No one had commanded her to tear and rend until life fled her stepmother's body. She'd done that herself, and she'd enjoyed it, just like no one had forced her to summon a demon that night at the crossroads. No one had made her trade her soul so readily, so eagerly. Valerius might have orchestrated events from the shadows, but she'd walked into his trap with eyes wide open, choosing darkness at every turn. The bond hummed beneath her skin, no longer the false enchantment of before, but something permanent and undeniable. She could feel Valerius somewhere in the castle, probably waiting for her next escape attempt or explosion of rage. But the rage had burned away, leaving behind something cooler, darker, more dangerous. 3 years she'd dreamed of revenge, imagining it would somehow restore the innocent girl she'd been before Marguerite destroyed her life. But that girl was gone, consumed not by demon magic or princely schemes, but by her own choices. Every step toward this moment, every kill, every seduction, every surrender had been hers to make. The revelation should have crushed her. Instead, it felt like shackles falling away. If she was already damned, already transformed, already bound eternally to a monster, why keep fighting what she'd become? The chamber door opened behind her. Through the mirror, she watched Valerius enter, his expression carefully neutral. He'd clearly expected to find her in the midst of another escape attempt, or perhaps catatonic with horror over her actions. Instead, she stood calmly before the mirror, blood-stained and naked, meeting his reflected gaze with eerie serenity. "If the bond is real now," she asked softly, "what does that make us?" She felt his sudden unease through the bond, not at her nudity or the blood, but at the stillness in her voice. Her rage he'd known how to handle. This quiet acceptance unsettled him far more. Over the next week, Ella moved through the castle like a shadow given form, no longer fighting against her chains, but testing their limits. Where before she'd raged and resisted, now she observed and adapted. The court noticed the change, how she carried herself with quiet authority, how her smiles held secrets and steel. During the morning council session, when Lord Thorne proposed executing a minor noble family for suspected treason, Ella spoke up from her place beside Valerius. "Death would be wasteful," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Their lands border the northern territories. Better to marry their youngest daughter to one of our loyal alphas. Let them watch their bloodline be absorbed into ours. A far crueler fate for those who value pure ancestry." She felt Valerius's surprise ripple through the bond, followed by dark appreciation. Several council members shifted uncomfortably, but none dared contradict her. The lesson hadn't been lost on them. Their prince's mate was no mere trophy. When the Iron Mist Pack's delegation arrived seeking alliance, Ella took particular interest. They were powerful, proud, and notoriously difficult to negotiate with. She watched their alpha, Magnus Blackfang, posture and demand during the initial meeting, noting every tell and weakness. That evening, she cornered Magnus in the library, away from his guards and advisors. "Your pack's strength is admirable," she said, moving with predatory grace she'd learned from Valerius. But your southern border is vulnerable to rogues, and your timber trade relies on our waterways. She traced a finger along the map spread before them. It would be unfortunate if bandits began targeting your shipments. Even more unfortunate if they seemed to be wearing your rival's colors. Magnus's face darkened. Is that a threat, little queen? Oh no, Ella smiled, letting her wolf shine through her eyes. It's an opportunity. Sign the alliance on our terms, and those problems never materialize. In fact, you might find your trade routes becoming remarkably secure. Through the bond, she felt Valerius watching from the shadows, his emotion a mix of surprise and satisfaction. When Magnus left the library looking shaken, having agreed to terms far more favorable than originally hoped, Valerius emerged. "You've learned quickly," he observed, moving to stand behind her. "I had an excellent teacher." Ella turned to face him. "You showed me that true power isn't about who can bite hardest or command loudest. It's about making others choose submission because fighting seems worse than surrender." His silver eyes studied her with new intensity. "And is that what you've done? Surrendered?" "No." She stepped closer, letting him feel her emotions through the bond: confidence, ambition, challenge. "I've evolved. You wanted a weapon, a toy to control. Instead, you've created an equal. The mate bond ensures we can't lie to each other, can't hide our true natures." She reached up to trace his jaw, a gesture both intimate and threatening. "So tell me, my prince, what do you fear more? That I might try to destroy you, or that I might actually be worthy of ruling beside you?" Valerius caught her wrist, but didn't push her away. Through the bond, she felt his wariness warring with fascination. "And what exactly are you proposing?" "Partnership," Ella said simply. "Real partnership, not your games of control and submission. If we're truly mates, if this bond is as permanent as Malachar made it, then treat me as your equal. Let me help build your empire instead of just decorating it." "You understand what that means?" His grip tightened. "Partnership in my world isn't pretty. It means sharing in all the darkness, all the necessary cruelty. No more pretending your hands are cleaner than mine." "I killed my stepmother with my teeth," Ella reminded him, baring them in a smile. "I think we're past pretense." Through the bond, she felt his decision crystallize, intrigue winning out over caution. "Very well," he said softly. "Partners then. But remember, little wolf, you asked for this. Everything that comes after is as much your choice as mine." The afternoon court session had been mundane. Land disputes and minor grievances bringing nobles before the throne. Ella sat beside Valerius in her silver-thorned crown, observing how he handled each petition with calculated fairness or strategic cruelty as needed. Through their bond, she felt his usual mix of boredom and sharp attention. Then the air changed. The torches lining the throne room walls flickered green, and temperature plummeted until breath frosted in the air. Nobles scrambled back as shadows gathered in the center of the chamber, coalescing into Malachar's beautiful, terrible form. "Your Majesties," the demon purred, golden eyes gleaming with amusement. "Forgive the interruption, but I've come to collect a rather important debt." Ella tensed, but it was Valerius's reaction that shocked her. Through their bond, she felt something she'd never experienced from him before: pure, cold fear. "Our arrangement was clear," Valerius said, his voice tight. "The payment wasn't due until the mate bond was complete?" Malachar's laugh echoed unnaturally. "Oh, it's complete now, quite beautifully so, which is why I'm here to collect what you promised me, Prince Valerius. Not the girl's soul. That was merely part of the game. No, I've come for what you traded to ensure she would be perfect for you." The remaining courtiers fled as dark energy crackled through the chamber. Ella gripped the throne's armrest. "What is he talking about?" "Should I tell her?" Malachar asked Valerius with mock concern. Or would you prefer to explain how you traded away your capacity for love to make sure you'd never be vulnerable to the mate bond's emotional demands? How you ensured you could control her without risking your heart? The words hit Ella like physical blows. Through their bond, she felt Valerius's fear sharpen into something desperate. You see, little queen, Malachar continued, your prince wanted a mate he could possess without loving. The perfect weapon, bound to him but never able to truly touch his heart. Because a heart that can't love can't be broken, can it, Valerius? You're lying, Ella whispered, but the bond told her otherwise. Every emotion from Valerius confirmed it. His calculated control, his fascination without warmth, his possessiveness without true devotion. But something unexpected happened. Malachar circled them like a predator savoring its prey's fear. When you accepted the bond willingly, knowing exactly what he was, it created something new, something real. The magic transformed beyond my original design. The demon's smile widened. So I'm feeling generous. I'll offer you both a choice. Ella felt Valerius's hand close over hers. Whether to restrain or reassure, she wasn't sure. Option 1. I break the bond completely. Valerius regains his capacity for love, free to feel genuine emotion again. Ella reclaims her soul, pure and untainted. You both go your separate ways, free from each other and from me. Malachar's eyes glowed brighter. Option 2. Keep the bond, but accept that it will change you both forever. Neither quite mortal, neither quite demon, but something new altogether. Powerful beyond measure, but permanently transformed by darkness. And if we refuse to choose? Valerius demanded. Then I take what I'm owed by force, your capacity for love, ripped away while the bond remains. Imagine it, little queen, bound eternally to a mate who can never truly care for you, who can only possess and control. Malachar's voice dripped false sympathy. The choice must be unanimous. You have until midnight to decide. The demon vanished, leaving them alone in the shadowed throne room. Through their bond, Ella felt Valerius's emotions churning, fear, rage, and underneath it all, a desperate need he couldn't voice. The throne room felt impossibly vast as Ella rose from her seat, each step echoing against the marble floor. Valerius mirrored her movement, his silver eyes never leaving her face. Between them, Malachar waited with the patient smile of someone who had orchestrated this moment across centuries. Freedom, Ella whispered, testing the word. Through their bond, she felt Valerius's presence tighten like a fist around her heart. To be as I was before, pure, untainted. Malachar's voice carried a mocking lilt. The innocent daughter of Alpha Edmund Ashbourne, restored to what you might have been without our interference. Ella's fingers brushed the silver thorns of her crown. The metal was cool against her skin, but it no longer felt foreign. It had become as much a part of her as her own bones. And what exactly would I be? She turned to face Valerius, who stood rigid with tension. That weak girl who scrubbed floors and dreamed of justice? Who thought killing her stepmother would somehow wash away the darkness inside her? A bitter laugh escaped her throat. I chose this. Every step of the way, even when I thought I was being manipulated, I chose it. Through their bond, she felt Valerius's emotions surge, possessiveness tinged with something deeper, something that made his carefully controlled expression crack slightly at the edges. Fear, yes, but also a desperate need he couldn't fully comprehend without his capacity for love. You could be free of me, he said, his voice rougher than usual. Free of this bond that was forced upon you through trickery and magic. Was it? Ella stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of mercury in his silver eyes. You orchestrated everything, crafted the perfect trap, but in the end, she pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palm. In the end, I said yes, knowing exactly what you were, what we both are. Malakar's presence shimmered with anticipation. The choice must be unanimous, the demon reminded them. Freedom and restoration, or permanent transformation. What will it be? For the first time since Ella had known him, Valerius didn't command. His voice held an unfamiliar note of uncertainty as he asked, "What do you choose, Ella Ashbourne?" The question hung in the air between them. This was different from the desperate bargain at the crossroads, different from accepting his mate claim before the court. This was real choice. Perhaps the first true choice she'd had since the night she summoned Malakar. Ella looked down at her hands, remembering how they'd felt covered in Marguerite's blood. She thought of the way nobles now bowed lower when she passed, the whispers that followed her through the castle corridors. Dark Queen, they called her, the broken wolf who rose to rule beside the monster king. Through their bond, she felt Valerius's presence, the familiar weight of his power, his cunning, his darkness that matched her own. What they had wasn't love, not in any pure or simple way. It was something older, darker, more primal, a recognition between equals forged in shadow and blood. "I choose the bond," Ella said clearly, holding Valerius's gaze. "I choose what I've become. I won't surrender my crown or my power, and I won't pretend to be something I'm not." Her lips curved in a sharp smile. "I'm no longer the victim in this story. I'm the monster who won." She felt Valerius's relief and triumph surge through their connection. Without hesitation, he said, "I choose the bond as well. Let us be transformed together." Malakar's golden eyes blazed with satisfaction. "Then let it be done. The mate bond remains, but you'll both become something new, neither mortal nor demon, but perfect in your darkness." Malakar's laugh shattered the throne room's silence like breaking glass, the sound echoing off marble walls as ancient magic surged through the air. Golden light erupted from the demon's form, wrapping around Ella and Valerius in burning tendrils that sank beneath their skin. The mate bond between them exploded into something deeper, vaster, more terrible than before. Ella felt it crystallize in her chest like black diamond, no longer a magical tether, but a fundamental part of her being. Through it, she sensed Valerius more clearly than ever, not just his emotions, but the very essence of who and what he was. Pain ripped through her as the transformation took hold. Her wolf howled, her blood burned, and she felt her very nature shifting into something new. Power flooded her veins, raw and ancient, matching Valerius's own immortal strength. Her senses sharpened beyond mortal limits until she could hear the terrified heartbeats of every courtier watching from the shadows, smell their fear like sweet wine. Beside her, Valerius underwent his own metamorphosis. The empty void where his capacity for love had been twisted and reformed, narrowing to a single burning point focused solely on her. Not love as mortals knew it. This was darker, more primal, an all-consuming obsession that matched the savage devotion growing in her own transformed heart. "Perfect," Malakar purred, circling them as the magic continued its work. "Neither mortal nor demon, but something gloriously in between. How fitting that your love story should end with both of you becoming the monsters you truly are." With a gesture, the demon conjured images of flame that danced through the air. The Ashbourne manor burning, its grounds turned to ash, all records and memories of Ella's former life consumed in supernatural fire. Her father's legacy, her childhood home, every trace of the innocent girl she'd once been, all of it vanished like smoke. "A parting gift," Malakar said, golden eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "The complete destruction of what was, leaving only what you've chosen to become. After all, a dark queen can't be weighed down by such sentimental attachments." The demon's form began to fade, but its voice lingered. "You've given me such delicious chaos to watch unfold. I do hope you'll keep things interesting." As Malakar vanished, The throne room filled with nobles summoned to witness what would follow. They entered cautiously, like prey animals sensing predators, and gathered before the dais where Ella and Valerius stood. The coronation proceeded with ancient ceremony. When the high priest placed the crown of thorns upon Ella's head, she felt its weight as a triumph rather than a burden. Valerius's own crown gleamed darkly beside hers as they turned to face their court. The assembled nobility sank into deep bows, their fear and respect perfuming the air. Ella surveyed them with her new silver eyes, matching Valerius's own, and felt the intoxicating rush of absolute power. Everything she'd lost, her soul, her humanity, her chance at redemption, seemed a small price for what she'd gained. Valerius's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with possessive strength. Through their transformed bond, she felt his fierce satisfaction, his dark joy at having shaped her into this. Not a broken victim, but a queen who chose her own damnation, his perfect match in power and cruelty. Ella's smile curved sharp and wicked as she gazed out over her kingdom. The innocent wolf who once begged a demon for revenge was gone, burned away with everything else she'd been. In her place stood a dark queen, crowned in thorns and shadow, bound eternally to her monster king. The court trembled before them, and Ella felt nothing but triumph.